Hello, everyone. We are getting ourselves live and up on Zoom and on Facebook. We are so excited that you have joined us today. We're going to give people just a couple minutes to get settled and to get logged on to their computers. I'm so excited. I have Dr. Cynthia Huling Hummel with me. Hi, Cynthia. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much. I'm so
And
excited about today. I've been looking forward to today for a while.
oh, I am so looking forward to it as well. And I know I'm going to do a more formal introduction here in just a couple minutes, but again, so excited that you're with us. And where are you based out of, Cynthia?
I live I live in Elmira, New York, which is upstate New York.
Okay.
Definitely south of Buffalo, but definitely west of New York City. So it's what we call the southern tier of New York. But it's a wonderful place to live, and I've been here in upstate New York since 1996.
1996. That's fantastic. So
Yeah.
you're coming to us from upstate New York. I'm coming from Omaha, Nebraska, and we would love to know where everyone else is joining us today. So if you're on the Zoom platform, you can chat into the chat box. I'll keep an eye on that and see where we have people coming to us from. If you're joining us live on Facebook, welcome. Pardon me. We're so excited that you're joining us. Give us a like, a heart, a thumbs up. Let us know that you're listening. Also, where are you coming from? Let us know. We'd love to see where the various participants are coming in from. I know we have Connie from Austin, Texas. Hi, Connie. We have Jameis, that's a neat name, from Atlanta. So hello, welcome. Excited to have everyone. It's always fun to know where people are joining us from. Sometimes we have people from Canada, and we've even had people from the UK. So sometimes this turns into an international live chat, which is always really fun. So we'd love to hear where you're joining us from. Again, thank you for tuning in today to our live chat. My name is Lakelyn Hogan. I am a gerontologist and caregiver advocate at Home Instead Senior Care, and I'm joined today by Dr. Cynthia Huling Hummel, and we are going to be talking about moving from why me to what's next. So Dr. Cynthia, she'll be talking to us about her diagnosis experience with Alzheimer's, and then we'll be jumping into some questions, and we'll eventually take questions from our audience. So if you're listening, feel free to chat your questions into us on Facebook. You can put your questions in the comments. And on the Zoom platform, you can chat the questions in. I'll keep an eye on those and then ask them of Cynthia as we go throughout our chat today. And then we have a few new people that have joined us. We have Kevin from Milwaukee. Hello. And then we have Joe from Burnswick, Maine. So again, welcome to everyone. We're so excited to have you. And we have muted all of your lines if you're joining us on Zoom, so don't worry about making any background noise. And we're going to record today, and we will put it back out on our website. So if you want to forward it on to a friend or family member, want to watch it again, share it on your social media platforms, you'll be able to do so. All right, I think that we have given people a little time to get settled, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Cynthia Huling Hummel as our guest on today's live chat. I wanted to tell you a little bit about Cynthia because she is very involved in her local community and on the national and international stage, really, when it comes to Alzheimer's advocacy and research. So she is an artist, author, and fierce Alzheimer's advocate. Cynthia has become a voice for those living with Alzheimer's disease. Her own experience living with Alzheimer's and passion for research guided her to serve as a national early stage advisor for the Alzheimer's Association, and she'll be entering her 10th year in the Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative, which is a long-term observational clinical study. Cynthia has also presented at 2 national or NIH research summits, a little bit of a tongue twister there, and is currently serving on the panel for the National Academy of Science Alzheimer's DeCal study, and as a member of the NIH-NIA work group on biomarkers, genetics. She also serves on the Dementia Nomenclature Steering Committee. She's completed a 2-year term on the National Council of Alzheimer's Research, Care, and Services, representing the 5.8 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. And as an author, she has authored a book called UnMasking Alzheimer's. I've read it. It's a beautiful work of art and piece of literature. And the book really provides an opportunity for people to discuss the changes and challenges that can come with a dementia diagnosis. And then finally, last but not least, she's a member of Faith United Against Alzheimer's and wrote several chapters for Dementia-Friendly Worship, which is a multi-faith handbook for chaplains, clergy, and faith communities. So my goodness, with all of that wonderful work that you're doing, I'm so honored that you could join us today, Cynthia. Welcome. We're so excited to have you.
It is good to be with you today.
Wonderful. And it is good to be with you as well. So I thought, now that we know a little bit about your background, I was wondering if you could tell us more about your diagnosis journey and how long you have had the diagnosis, and just give us a little update if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, sure. I wanted to say that I was living in Lyons, New York. I was the pastor of the First Presbyterian Church of Lyons, and I was running a very busy church. There were a lot of things that were happening in the life of the church. I moved there in 1996, and in about 2003, I was working on my doctorate. I had responsibilities to the church, 2 teenagers, and I really started to notice that my memory was fading. By the middle of the week, I couldn't remember what I had spoken about just days before. I couldn't remember or recognize people in my church when I'd be out and about at the community. In the community, I often didn't even say hello to people because I didn't really realize that I knew them. I was pleasant to people, but it was very troubling because I just I couldn't understand what was going on. And so that sent me off to the doctors. And of course, the doctors were wonderful. They really were trying to figure out what was going on and wondering that maybe it was menopause, or maybe it was my thyroid, or maybe it was a head injury that I'd had, or maybe it was an exposure. So they were really doing a lot of testing to help me try and figure out what was going on. In 2007, I moved to a new church in the southern tier of New York, and my memory problems moved with me. Imagine that. And I was so concerned because I worked so hard, and I spent a good part of my day just trying to write down everything I was supposed to do or I did so that I wouldn't forget important things. But it all kind of came to a head one day when I realized I had to do something. I was on my way to the cemetery to do a service. A family was waiting for me at the cemetery with their loved one. And I had gotten into my car and I realized I didn't know how to get to the cemetery. And I was so distressed because here I had this family waiting for me, and the clock was tick, tick, ticking. And I couldn't remember. And I drove around in circles, and I called the church. And of course, no one was at the church because I was in my car. My secretary wasn't there. And I was starting to freak out. I ended up calling the local florist because I didn't know how else to get to the cemetery. And he thought I was joking. That's a good one. No, don't. And I couldn't remember the name of the deceased, the paper that I had with all the information, the book. I was just at that point, I was so frazzled. And I did the service. The funeral director was not happy with me. The family was distressed because here I was late. And so that really kind of pushed me then for more testing. And as part of the testing, they did a great, I was referred to a neuropsychologist who did a lot of memory testing and other kinds of testing, looking at the different regions of the brain. And one of the tests, she said, "You're a doctor of ministry. What are the names of the books of the Bible?" Oh. Books of the Bible. I mean, we had done all the other things about words and what orientation things, but this just kind of came out of the blue. And so I couldn't do it. I started at Genesis and I just started singing the children's song, and the tears started rolling down my eyes because I couldn't even name the ABCs of my faith. And that was so distressing to me. Um, and, we looked over the results after she had had a chance to compile them. And then I met with my physician to go over those results. And I was at both ends of the bell-shaped curve. I'm a very smart person, but I performed so poorly compared to other people my age. And so here I was in the second percentile of auditory remembrance of what had been shared. And so it was very discouraging. But the doctor said, we need to talk because you've got amnestic mild cognitive impairment, and it's due to Alzheimer's disease. He had looked at, my family and my background. My mom had died of Alzheimer's. Her only brother had died of Alzheimer's. My grandmother, their mother, had some sort of dementia. We don't know what kind, but it was very, very difficult. I went to my church the session to explain, what was going on and that the doctor had recommended that I stop. And they were, one gentleman said, well, that explains a lot. I thought I was covering up so well for my losses and, the problems that I was having, apparently not well enough. And the church was wonderful. They gave me a farewell party. I was able to stay in the house until I found a new place to live in a new community. But that was a low point. I mean, it was bad because I just felt like it was so unfair. I'd prepared my whole life for this job that God had given me to be a pastor. And now what? I mean, I was angry. I was upset. I was lonely. I was freaking out because, I knew what would happen with an Alzheimer's diagnosis. And so I had to move. I had to figure out how to move from why me to what next. And that was not an easy process, let me tell you. But
well,
it's been
go ahead.
No, it's been, I mean, that's what I had to do. And that's what I urge other people to do as well. I mean, I think part of it is we have to grieve our losses in life. No matter who we are, at some point in our life, there will be a loss, whether it's a loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, of a relationship. We have losses in life, and we can sit home and we can feel really sorry for ourselves. And I think we do need to spend that time, reflecting on the changes, but we can't stay stuck there, if that makes sense.
Yes, and that's why we named this live chat "Moving from Why Me to What's Next," because you have kind of been able to make that transition. And so, would you mind sharing with us, how you got from the why me to the what's next? And thank you for sharing that your diagnosis journey and for so honestly and sincerely talking about your experience.
It was hard. It took 8 years, by the way, just to get my diagnosis, between the move. But I think that when we're grieving, we need to take care of ourselves, and try and find that balance again in our life, with whatever it is that we're grieving. If we're grieving because we don't have the same abilities that we had in our earlier years. And so, I mean, I could sit on my couch and turn on the TV and pop bonbons all day, but it wouldn't make my Alzheimer's go away. I had to really reach inside myself. And part of it is being a preacher. And I stand in the pulpit on Sunday and talk about faith and getting through the hard times and relying. And I mean, I have to practice what I preach. It would be inauthentic, but it was hard because I was so lonely in my new town. It's hard to make friends when you can't remember people or their names but I decided I just had to kind of get out of that funk, and I had to move forward. And so there was a college right in my town, a beautiful college, Elmira College, and I went and talked to the dean of students, and I told her about my diagnosis, not sure how long things would last. By the way, the doctor said 3 years, maybe more.
Wow.
So I said, put me down for maybe more, I'm going for that. But Elmira College invited me to enroll and to be a student there. And so I'm now on my 39th class there. I don't remember squat, but I'm not doing it to get another degree. I'm doing it for that social outing, to make those connections. I decided I needed to volunteer, so I looked for volunteer opportunities, and one was the local arts center, the Performing Arts Center, needed ushers and bartenders, and I thought, well, I can be a bartender. I can open a beer. I can pour a glass of wine. And occasionally parishioners would come in and say, Pastor Cynthia, is that you behind the? Yep, that's me. So I tried different things. It was a chance for me to dabble in new things and to try things as our lives change, as we age and as we have different abilities and lose abilities, things change. And so it's a chance to try different things. And so that was a real blessing. And I also had to remember my mom. My mom always had these wonderful sayings, like, no one ever promised you a rose garden. And I have a mask that goes with that. But she taught us from the time we were little that everybody struggles in life, and you don't get a free pass. Everybody has to kind of to pick themselves up. She would say, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, and get moving. Her philosophy in life was when we help other people, we help ourselves. And so that was my chance to really embrace that in a way that I'd never embraced it before. And so Alzheimer's became my ministry. And so I looked for ways to connect with other people who were living with Alzheimer's. And that's how I found the Alzheimer's Association. They had an 8-week class for people in the early stages. And I thought, if I'm in the early stages of Alzheimer's, I better learn more about this. Yeah. And so I signed up and took the class, and I sat in the parking lot and I cried because I just felt so sad. So, I think the thing about moving from why me to what next, it's not like you start here and then you end up here. There's peaks and valleys, you have good days and hard days. But the main thing, I think, is just to keep moving forward. And when you help other people, you do help yourself. That's just my family motto, and it's helped me to get through some hard times.
I think that that saying that your mom had said, no one promises you a rose garden, and I know you said you had a mask, and
here it is.
I was hoping you could tell us more about your book and your masks, because I think that we've talked about how art can be such a great form of expression for people who are living with the disease, maybe even their family members, caregivers, just to express the emotions that can come along with living with Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. So yeah, tell us more about your mask. I love that you brought or have them right there to show us.
Yeah, I had two. I pulled this one out too because it spoke to me that I call this mask, you play the cards you're dealt. We have to play the cards we're dealt. And I don't know if your listeners can see, but they're little teeny playing cards all over. And to say that, I'm not a poker player, I'm not a card player, but I think it's a helpful analogy for people to say we don't get to choose some of the circumstances that happen to us in life. Things happen, people get sick, people get hurt. We don't get to put it back in the box or in the bag and say, oh, you know what? I don't really want Alzheimer's. Let me put that one back and I'm going to grab something else. Thank you so much. We don't get to choose Parkinson's or cancer. We have to play the cards we're dealt. If we think that we're going to get a free pass, as my mom says, no one ever gave you a rose garden, promised you a rose garden. So one of the things that has helped me is my art. And I guess it was about 2 years ago, that they started a wonderful program here in Elmira at the Community Arts of Elmira. And it's called Art Reflects, and it's for people who are living with dementia and care partners. And we go once a month and we make art. And so one of the options one month was to make a mask. And you could do whatever you wanted with your mask. People did Mardi Gras masks or animal masks. But that day, I felt like it was a hard day, and I decided I would make a mask that felt like what I was feeling that day about living with Alzheimer's. And so, I came home and I thought more about that. And I realized one mask didn't describe it. So I ordered a dozen masks on Amazon and I built my collection, and I ordered a dozen more. I'm up to 36 masks.
Wow.
They were all over my house, and some of them, and then what I did is I took pictures of them because people wanted to know about the masks, and they said, oh, so I took pictures, and then I wrote my book, which is Unmasking Alzheimer's, and it's inside are pictures of different masks. That one is about a roll of the dice. And again, life happens to us, and we don't get to choose what happens in many cases, but what we can choose is how we react to it. And so that's sort of my philosophy is, yes, it's appropriate to cry, it's appropriate to get angry, but not to get stuck there, to keep moving forward. So anyway, art is so important to people. Art and music. Art is a way to express ourselves and to let out those feelings and to communicate, even when we maybe can't speak about something, maybe by drawing something or painting something. I have to show you this because I started taking a painting class.
Oh, that's so neat.
When did I start? I think it was like maybe November or December. And it's at the Senior Citizens Center. And this is I did 2 days ago. And I just made a tree with lots of different colors. My thought was I needed color in my life. And I didn't want to do a black and white winter scene. I wanted to do something colorful. But just being able to sit down and draw or paint just kind of takes away all the stresses and the worries. And for that period of time, I'm just able to find a lot of joy and peace in doing art. And so I always recommend. And singing, oh my goodness, is so good for the brain.
And you're in a singing group. I was going to mention that because you're talking about the arts, and music is such a big part of that. And we know that, the way that dementia impacts the brain, the part of our brain that knows music and that can recall music isn't affected quite like the other regions of the brain. There's documentaries and movies that they've made about that. So tell us how you keep engaged in music, because I think that it's really neat.
I've got a lot of musical things going on. I've been in a band since 1999, and I've been in the band I'm in now, Country Magic, since 2004. And I was inducted into the New York State Country Music Hall of Honor. I think it was 2016, right around there. But our band, we go to, no matter what else is booked on our band schedule, there's 2 nursing homes that we sing at every single month. We've done it for 8 years.
Wow.
And there's something about singing with the residents and having them request songs, and especially the folks who are living with dementia, to see them tap their toes or sing along to You Are My Sunshine. That was one of my mom's favorite songs. And even far along in her dementia, she loved to sing. To see people stand up when we sing God Bless America, and to have the veterans put their hands across their hearts, or to see people sing Amazing Grace, all the verses. They know it because it's in their hearts. And so I really promote music because it's something that gets way deep inside us, and that Alzheimer's can't seem to totally eradicate, which is wonderful news for all of us. So to have that playlist of songs that makes us happy, or to be able to sing those things. So I started a group, I guess it was 2 years ago, 1 year ago, called Faithful Friends. We decided that we would get together on a regular basis, people living with dementia, and we would go sing for other people.
Oh,
And of course, we invited our care partners to come with us. And then there were some community friends, people in the community that maybe were in some way impacted by Alzheimer's or one of the related dementias, and they come along and we just have a great time singing. And somebody will say, "What about this song?" And we'll just take a stab at it. And it's just a joy to be able to come together and to unite our voices and to sing. It makes my heart sing when I look out and I see people who are nonverbal, um, mouthing the words or singing the words or moving to the words in the music. It's beautiful.
mm. Music it seems to be, or does seem to be kind of something that's so universal that no
Yeah.
matter if you speak the same different languages or if you have different abilities, music is something that we can all come together in and share in, whether it's just tapping along or singing along or swaying along. I think that that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's so neat that you're involved in music and art. And
Yeah.
it sounds like your community does a lot for individuals living with dementia, their care partners. So what a great kind of community that you have around you.
It is. And we had a meeting, I guess it was 2 Sundays ago, talking about dementia friendly communities. And what was so neat about it, there were a lot of neat things, but one piece is that we had 3 different counties and 3 different directors from 3 different offices on aging saying, we're not going to look at the boundaries of our community. We're going to look at how do we make this whole area dementia friendly? And so we're having those conversations now about what will it take to teach people about dementia, especially people who've never had a chance to meet anybody in the early stages. I think there's been such a stigma about dementia, that one day you're walking around, the next day after your diagnosis, people are talking to you like you don't.
Mm,
Um, it's crazy. But so how do we teach the different constituents, the stakeholders, the people in our community so that it makes the whole community a better place to live?
yes.
And then people like myself who want to stay in our homes as long as possible, then we're able to do so because then the community has supports for us. And so right now I'm trying to build those supports so they'll be ready for me.
That's great. Yeah, Dementia Friends and Dementia Friendly America is a movement across
Yeah.
the United States, and Home Insight has been involved in that. And I know that there's a website where people can go, so we'll post that in the comments at some point. I think it's dementiafriends.org. Don't quote me on that, but we'll find it and get it out there. People can go out and learn more, because I think even if you just have kind of a baseline knowledge of dementia, you know a little bit about it, then you're able to just be a better supportive community member
Yeah.
of someone who might just need a little extra support or a few extra reminders, to your point, to stay independent and be part of the community for as long as they can.
Mhm. And there's a terrible loneliness sometimes when people have a diagnosis and people don't are afraid to have a conversation, or oftentimes when you get a diagnosis of something serious, people will drop out of your life, and I'm asking people to drop in,
Mm,
um, to to make that phone call, to invite somebody out for coffee, to reach out and to help that person and to be a resource.
that is a great point. I like that, to drop in instead of
Yeah.
drop out. I like that phrase.
Yeah.
Well, I know I have a couple more questions for you that we're going to get to in just a moment, but I wanted everyone to know that we are taking questions live. So if you have a question for Cynthia, please feel free to chat it into our question and answers box on Zoom or in the chat box. If you're on Facebook, you can just comment below this live feed with your questions for Cynthia, and we will get to some of them. I'll kind of keep an eye on it and let Cynthia know if we have a question that has come in. But my next question for you, Cynthia, I know that we've talked about, being a good community member, and we've talked about, caregivers and care partners and family members. I mean, when someone is diagnosed, it does impact the whole family, the whole kind of support structure for that individual. So do you have any thoughts or pieces of advice or information that you think would be important for family members, care partners to know about a person living with dementia and how they can best support that individual?
Thank you for asking. I think one of the first things is don't take over too much too soon. I think it comes from a place of love. I've seen it in my pastorate. People will, dad gets a diagnosis, no problem. Go watch TV, dad. We'll take care of everything. And all of a sudden, the things that dad once did, he's no longer responsible for. And once you lose those skills, they're harder to gain back. And so I always say to let the person do as much as he or she can for as long as they can. To have responsibilities, to have jobs. There's the dignity of the risk and the duty of care. And so balancing those two things of keeping our loved ones with dementia safe and also letting them have their independence and balancing those things out. I think so many times people come in and it comes from a place of love, I believe, and they just take over. The checkbook is taken from dad, the keys are taken from dad, and he's just left to sit in a chair. And that's a pretty sad situation. I think, yes, things have to evolve over time, but don't be too quick to take those responsibilities away because they give life meaning.
Absolutely.
Everybody wants to have purpose.
Yes, that is so true. To have a purpose and to have something to get you up and out of bed in the morning is something that
set the table. What are your jobs? You may not be able to do them the way you once did, and people should be careful not to criticize. Well, that's not good enough. I'm going to remake that bed. To celebrate what we all can still do and not worry about maybe what we couldn't do or can't do as well.
That's a great piece of advice. Let's see, my next question. I think that when you talk about, remaining independent and, celebrating the things that you're still able to do, are there any kind of tips or tricks that you have found over the years to be helpful in helping you personally to remain independent? I know you and I've talked about a few of these things, so I would love for you to share.
Siri is my best friend. She's the first person I speak to in the morning and the last person I speak to at night. She gives me the weather. She tells me what day it is. She gives me reminders. I use the alarm clock throughout the day. I use the timer because I have no sense of time anymore. I can come upstairs to do something and be so distracted that I could forget about my next appointment. So having my phone really helps me a lot. But then there's the old-fashioned method, which works equally as well. If I have something very important, I put a piece of paper on the floor next to my bed, that says, blood work, 8 a.m., don't eat, and then I'll put that, several other copies of that sign in front of the refrigerator or by the car, so that I'm not eating on my way to the blood work. So I have a memory bench. And what I did is I bought it's kind of a long bench from Amazon or somewhere. And I pile up by the days of the week all the things that I need on that day. So it's a visual reminder if I'm going to the gym or if I'm going to my art class or if I'm preaching, I have it by the days of the week. And then as I think of something or somebody adds something to my list or I add something to my day, then that goes in that pile on that day. And then I can look at that bench and say, okay, what's going on tomorrow? And then I've got it all there. So it's always evolving, but it helps me a lot. And so I think if you can come up with a strategy for organizing your life, routines do help, I think. And I ask for as many reminders as I can get. When I have a doctor's appointment, I ask them for 3 different reminders. You know, a few days before, the day before, and the morning of. It's automated. Many of those medical services have automated. So it guarantees that I'll be there for the appointment.
Yeah.
You know, it helps them, but it also helps me. So I think just asking for help, not being embarrassed or afraid, just as when we age, we can't do everything we once did. Maybe we can't get that light bulb, and we might ask a neighbor. To be able to ask for help and to build the circle of support so that, you know, people are checking on you, and, you know, you're just putting things out there so that people know that you're doing okay.
Yeah.
I think it makes a difference.
Absolutely. I think that those are great tips. That cell phone. I think many of us, we have cell phones. Oh, and headphones. I remember you would tell me about those as well.
I forgot. One of the things about my Alzheimer's, we're all different because it's a snowflake disease, is that I can't be around. I don't enjoy being in noisy environments. And if you've ever been to a restaurant recently, they've got at least 10 TVs that are on, and then the music on top of it, and the bar noise. And so these are my handy dandy little headphones. They're made for people who have an autistic diagnosis, an autism diagnosis. And I also have little earplugs. So depending on the volume of the noise, I might just put in my little earplugs. Or if things are super loud, I might put my earplugs and my headset on. But that helps me be in situations. As this disease is progressing, I'm more and more sensitive to sound. And so things that used to please me are harder to deal with. Boisterous family gatherings where there's a lot going on, the football games playing, and everybody's you know, busy. It's harder for me to be in that environment for a long time, and I'll excuse myself to just kind of slow things down a bit.
Yeah. I think those are some great tips. And again, those things still allow you to remain independent and be social and engage in those activities that you really enjoy, but they set you up for success,
Yes.
which I think is so great. So thank you for sharing those tips. And then we have had one question come in so far. So if you have questions for Cynthia, feel free to send them in. You can put them in the chat box in the comments section of Facebook. We're happy to answer those. So we had a question come in. She said, Joan said, Dr. Cynthia, thank you so much for your insight. She said, do you have a care partner? So she's wondering if you have someone in your life.
I live alone. I have care friends, people who care about me, and who check on me on a regular basis, and who I feel comfortable reaching out to. There'll be a time when I have to have somebody either live with me, or I'm exploring other housing options. I've actually visited a number of facilities nearby to say what would be a good match for me. And I've made my choices. I'm not quite ready to give up my independent lifestyle yet. I want to do this for as long as I can. But I've also asked my circle of support, those people that know me well, to help me make that decision on when that should be, because I'm mindful that I may not be the best judge of my abilities as things get harder. And I may need the mirror, somebody to hold the mirror up and say, it's time. Just as I've said that with my substitute preaching, when I forget too many things in the service, like the offering, that somebody says, you know, you've done a great job with this, but it's time for you to take care of yourself in a different way. And I think we all have to think about that, no matter whether we have a dementia diagnosis or not. We have to think about our care plans as we age or as our health changes. It's not easy to have that conversation, but it's important to have that conversation. Then everybody's on the same page.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that it's so great that you've engaged in that kind of planning, you know, kind of along the way. And it also helps to ensure that your wishes are made known to those that you care about the most, and that those who care for you. And so, you know, so often I work with families where, you know, a crisis situation has occurred, and they haven't had any discussions, and all of a sudden these care partners, family members are left making hard decisions, and they don't know what their loved one would have wanted. So I think that, for those listening, if they have a loved one who's aging or has a diagnosis, it's so important to engage in those planning conversations early. And it doesn't have to be a formal, sit down and let's get all the binders out. It can be, gradual conversation over time, but it's really important to eventually get those formal documents in place, but to just have conversations about planning.
Yeah, I tell people, it's part of adulting. We have to make these plans. We have to, meet with somebody in terms of an elder care lawyer or a family lawyer, to have a will, to make sure there's a healthcare proxy, to talk about our end of life wishes, and how we want to be treated or not treated. All those things need to be put down in writing. Occasionally people say, but Pastor Cynthia, if we talk about it, it might happen. I can assure you it will happen. That.
Yeah.
So it's better to deal with it head on, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So Joan, thank you so much for that question. We have a couple more questions coming in. So we have one from Candy. She's written a couple things, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase for her. She's coming from a place of love, but in her situation, other family members don't agree, and so it's kind of creating some family conflict. Do you have any advice for Candy's family, maybe on how to get people coming together, or how to kind of unite families in these kinds of discussions?
That's a tough one, because my experience as a pastor has been that a crisis, whether it's a health crisis or someone, can oftentimes bring a family together. Everybody puts aside any differences and comes to the table, and they're focused on that thing. And in other cases, it is the straw that breaks the camel's back, and everybody gets into their fighting mode and kind of digging in. If there's somebody that you could call upon, perhaps a rabbi or a pastor or a minister, to be the person that might help facilitate a conversation, a counselor. That's why it's very important that the person, each of us, articulate and put in writing what we want for ourselves, so that when push comes to shove, that families can say, well, I know we disagree on this, but this is what mom wanted. This is what she wrote when she was lucid, and we need to honor that, because that's our responsibility. So work with a counselor if you can, or somebody in the community that does conflict resolution. Those services are often available through the mental health agencies or through offices of the aging, and other organizations in your community. Conflict resolution, but that's a tough one.
Yes, I agree. I think you offered up some great words of advice, Cynthia. I think you're focusing on the individual's goal of care and what is important, and aligning in that. If you don't align in anything else, aligning in that, and then trying to figure out as a family, how you're going to help mom or dad or loved one achieve those goals. And maybe it's staying at home and bringing in services. Maybe it's, that individual wants to, get involved in an activity that they always loved, but they can no longer drive. So how do we work as a family to get them there? So it could be a lot of different things when it comes to a goal of care. But again, that's, I think, just so important.
Mm-hmm.
So Candy, we hope that is helpful to you in your situation. So if you have questions, we have time for about one or two more. So please feel free to chat them in. But I thought, I know that you have been involved in clinical trials, Cynthia, and I think that is one, thank you for doing that, because we know that participation in clinical trial is so important, and not enough people are involved in clinical trials. So would you mind just talking a little bit about your experience, or how you view clinical trials for Alzheimer's and other types of dementia?
Oh, thank you for asking me that question. It's my passion. We won't ever have a cure for Alzheimer's or the related dementias if we don't have people who are willing to participate in clinical trials. We need people who have cognitive symptoms that would make them wonderful candidates for different clinical trials. We also need people who are cognitively normal, who don't, as that baseline. I enrolled in ADNI. It's a clinical trial. It stands for Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative.
Mhm.
And it's the one that I'm in is an observational study. So I go once a year and they take MRIs, PET scans, of my brain. I did have to have a lumbar puncture one time, and I've opted in for 4 more because I want the researchers to have that information. But there's lots of different clinical trials. This one is looking at the changes in the brain over and against my cognitive performance in different domains. So I've been able to follow my progress, and I can follow the buildup of the tau in my brain. I can follow the shrinkage. Those things are interesting to me. They're not interesting to everybody, but they're interesting to me. There's lots of different trials. They have lifestyle trials where people, researchers are looking at the impact of changes to by exercise or music, and you can learn a lot. There's 2 websites. One is the Alzheimer's Association's Trial Match website, Trial Match. And the number we can put on the screen, 800-272-3900. Anyway, they'll talk to you about where you live and what your interests are, and they'll try and match you up geographically with a trial. The NIH has a wonderful website. Again, when you Google it, to Google clinical trials that are looking for specific people for specific kinds of studies. Sometimes people say, well, I didn't qualify for that study. And that may be true. They may be looking at a very narrow set of parameters. But again, we can't advance the science. We can't find treatments, interventions, and cures unless people are willing to step up and participate. And so my brain is going to the University of Rochester after I die. So from beyond the grave, I'll be able to continue in research. Research is where it's, we rest our hopes on the research, our hopes and our prayers, because we need the money for research, and we need the people to participate in order to find a cure for dementia.
Well, and I'm glad that you mentioned those websites, and we'll make sure that we get those out to those that are listening. And I think that sometimes also people get discouraged if they don't qualify for the first clinical trial that they look at engaging in. And I would just, encourage people to not give up and to look for other trials that they might be eligible for. And so thank you for sharing about how you've been involved. And I agree, it's so important. And what's exciting is the funding has been going up year over year. So now we need the people to come out and participate in the trials. So thank you for participating and for being an advocate for clinical trial participation. I think that's so important.
It is, but it's one way I can fight this disease, rather than just sitting back and feeling beaten down by it, to say I'm fighting back. And this is how I'm fighting back. I'm fighting back, through participation in the trials, through speaking out at different forums, to advocating for more funding, to pushing different community programs for people living with dementia and for care partners. We can all make a difference.
Yes.
It's easy to sit back and just to throw in the towel. But again, moving from why me to what next, right? To say, how can I make a difference moving forward? How can I use this to teach other people?
Well, this has been such a wonderful chat, and I could talk to you for hours and hours, but I know people have to get back to their lives, and you are so busy that I'm sure you have a full rest of your week of activities to get to. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you for joining me today and sharing. Thank you for being an advocate, for helping those who are impacted by this disease in various ways, from your clinical trial participation to your advocacy to just your love for humanity. You just seem like such a loving and caring person, and for all the work you're doing in your community and in the nation and in our world. I know the world's better because you're in it. So thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you. What was that? What was that, Cynthia? I cut you off there.
I just said no, just thank you to all the listeners. And, it's so nice that you could spend time with us today. And God bless you all. And thank you, Lakelyn, for hosting this wonderful program that really works to connecting people and showing people love and support. Thank you.
Well, it is our honor. We know that that community, as we've talked about this last hour, is so important. So we try to create that and expose people to information and encouragement and resources as much as we can. So thank you again so much. And we do these live chats every month. So if you are listening and wondering, what are we covering next month? We're actually going to be looking at frontal temporal dementia. We know that Alzheimer's disease is the most common, but there are other types of dementia. So we have some experts from the Frontal Temporal Degeneration Association, another long name, but they are a wonderful organization and they'll be on to share. So more information to come on that on our website and on our Facebook page. And so we hope to see you back here next month. But until then, everyone have a wonderful day. Cynthia, so good to see you and to talk to you. And I hope you have a wonderful and blessed rest of your day.
Blessings.
Bye, everyone.